Well, hello, Duarte. Welcome back to a second look, and welcome to Excavating the Gospels. You know, I've done this show now for about 10 years, and by far, it seems, the most popular subjects we cover are in the realm of archaeology, especially biblical archaeology. And so tonight, I thought, what a great opportunity at the beginning of this year to cover 10 of the most important archaeological discoveries relating to the four Gospels. And those 10 will pop up on your screen. There they are. And you can see we're going to have to go pretty fast to get those 10 discoveries in, as well as the pictures and the film clips we have to show you as well. So number 10, in true David Letterman style, is boat. What does that mean? Well, we have a picture for you of what has been called by archaeologists the Jesus boat. It so happened that in January 1986, there was a drought on the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee is about 12 by 6 miles, so it's what we Americans would call a big lake. But nevertheless, it's a very treacherous place, as you can tell from some of the gospel stories. And in January of 1986, a drought revealed on the shores of the Sea of Galilee this 26-foot-long remains, relic, you might say, of a first-century boat. Apparently, there's no doubt about the dating. The 26-foot by 8-foot high vessel. Even there's a picture on the wall of the museum showing where it is. And as people who are interested in the Bible, as well as archaeology, wondered, would there be room for 13 people on the boat? Because, of course, Jesus had 12 disciples and himself. And yes, there was no question about it. This boat, while no one could ever say it was the same boat used by the disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, who were all fishermen, it sort of is the way archaeology works. Archaeology doesn't prove the Bible necessarily, but it gives you background to show that what the Bible's talking about is reliable, it's factual, and it's accurate. Now, I can't let that one subject... This was quite a big discovery at the time. What's interesting for us is there are so many recent discoveries going on, but there's so much crowded stuff in the news, we can't really get into it all. But this almost went unnoticed in the Western world. But there it was, confirmation that 13 men could be out on the Sea of Galilee in a boat, and that means I can't resist showing you the next picture, which is a depiction of the night that Jesus walked on the water. Now, I hate to break off with hard artifactual evidence from archaeology like the splendid little boat we just saw, but the picture that you're seeing now is an artist's depiction of the disciples the night Jesus walked on the water. And we could use people right about now who walk on water. Some of the things we're going through in this country. In the book of Matthew, it says, Jesus appeared during the fourth watch of the night. That's about 3 o'clock in the morning. The disciples were out all night trying to get back to shore. They were having trouble, experienced fishermen as they were. Jesus appeared to them for a reason. It was just after John the Baptist had been beheaded. And Jesus wanted to reassure his disciples he was the God who could walk on water. Israel had been delivered from the Red Sea, and now he was showing he was acting in that realm. But the Jesus boat just adds a little bit of backing, you might say, and confirmation of some of those gospel events. Now, number 9 on our list, and we're going to have to move fast. Number 9, we're up in Galilee. The Jesus boat was found in the Sea of Galilee, excavated there. We're going to take you to Cana, which is a town over to the west of the Sea of Galilee, and there they claim to have one of the 6 jugs that were used to turn water into wine. If you remember the Gospel of John, Jesus did his first miracle in Cana of Galilee, which is a town either 3 miles northeast of Nazareth, where Jesus was from, up in the hill country, overlooking more or less the Sea of Galilee, or another town 8 miles to the northeast. And that by itself is interesting. You've got 2 spots claiming to be Cana, but the bronze prize goes to the town 3 miles to the northwest because there they used to grow fig trees, and Jesus refers to Nathanael, who was from Cana, incidentally. He said, I saw you sleeping under the fig tree. So that's the way historians do their work. Now, if you look at that jug again, we're not here to say, of course, that that is the stone jug. People of the city claim that. And when you go to the Middle East, you have to be careful about what they tell tourists. You have to be somewhat skeptical. But at least this shows you the size of the jugs. They were 20 to 30 gallon stone jugs. And if you have 6 more along the lines of that people try to say was one of the original 6, if they could all hold 20 to 30 gallons of wine, it shows you that our Lord knew how to party, because that's 120 gallons of wine and being turned into very good wine at that wedding. You'll remember the story where the man drew up the wine Jesus had turned from the water, and he said, boy, this is the best wine I've ever tasted. Well, that's Cana, and that's the Sea of Galilee area. Now we're going to move down to Jerusalem, which is a treasure trove of biblical archaeology. It's almost like a one-city exhibit for backing up many of the events in the Old and New Testament. But our focus tonight is on the Gospels. Now, we're going to see here, we have Jerusalem, a view of Jerusalem from the southeast. There's the famous Dome of the Rock on the right. And if you move out a little bit to the wall that was built by the Turks in the 1500s, almost nothing you see in Jerusalem except way deep down was from the time of Jesus these days, especially those walls around the city. But if you keep going down south, walking down that hill, you will come to this spot called the Pool of Siloam. We're going to show you a picture of the Pool of Siloam, which is the end of Hezekiah's tunnel. You know, in the ancient world, people had to build cities and to make sure there was a water supply. So King David built his capital city in Jerusalem because there was a spring called Gihon that ran under the city. That's mentioned many times in the Old Testament. But in the New Testament period, the spring sort of came to an ending at this beautiful colonnaded place called the Pool of Siloam at the base of the temple. And people would, as you know, very religious people, before they would go up to the temple, they would have to wash and bathe and cleanse, at least physically, as much as they could. And this is part of that famous gospel spot mentioned in John chapter 9, the Pool of Siloam. Jesus actually met a blind man, put clay on his face, a very strange thing to do, but apparently one of the Roman emperors had did it with his servants as well. It's strange enough to be true. That's the way the Gospels are. They record things that make you think, well, if it's in here, why would it be in here if they're just trying to make a deceptive story? Why put this in? Jesus put the clay on the man's eyes, told him to go wash in the Pool of Siloam. Now, if you look at that picture of the Pool of Siloam, once again, you will notice that today even there are steps going down to the pool. What is significant is not that long ago, actually it was about 2005, 2006, Jewish gas and pipe workers trying to repair the drainage system in Jerusalem found the whole other remains of steps that were from the 1st century that really expanded the size of this Pool of Siloam. So that's very recently, 2005, 2006. They've actually found if you knock that wall down, you'd get on the other side, you'd excavate and find 1st century seating rows. Well, this man went down to the Pool of Siloam, washed the clay off his eyes, and he could see. And if you want to read one of the more humorous stories in the Gospel, read about what happened when this man faced the Pharisees going around telling everyone a man named Jesus had made him well, which is precisely why Jesus had done that. Coming up from the pool to go into the temple, he caused quite a stir. You know, they didn't have radio and television, but word of mouth was pretty effective in Jerusalem in the 1st century. So that's the Pool of Siloam. You can read more about that in John chapter 9. Now we come to truly, if you're counting off the list, we have a list of New Testament gospel discoveries that we put up here once in a while. In case you're keeping track, number 10 was the boat from Galilee. Number 9 was the jug from Cana. Number 8, we've just covered the Pool of Siloam. Now, 2 of the most famous and fascinating artifacts that have been found in Jerusalem fairly recently. In the year 2002, in an Arab village south of Jerusalem, a group of workers, again, working in a place where, again, they're trying to make the roads go through, trying to do some infrastructure repair. They came across a section of graves and vaults in which were some limestone boxes. Now, that's what we're going to show you next. This is a famous artifact. It was only found in the year 2002. That's why we're doing this show, because some of these things have been happening so recently, it's been hard to keep up with all the news we've had to be digesting in the last 10 years. But in 2002, city workers uncovered in an Arab village to the south this limestone box. It's under 2 feet high, but the inscription on the outside made headlines all around the world because the inscription said, "James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus." Now, that's exactly what the New Testament Gospels tell us, that James was indeed one of the brothers of Jesus, the next oldest in the family of Mary. And when James writes his letter in the book of James, he calls himself the brother of our Lord. Now, what's interesting is, of course, this was such a very obvious reference to Jesus that you might say it almost had to be disputed, and it is. So if you go back and look at that picture of the James box, you can't see the inscription too well, but if you look at it along the middle, you can see that. Well, there have been all kinds of disputes. This is a disputed artifact, you might say, because if it's original, if it's true, it is the most important archaeological evidence of Jesus that we have yet discovered. Of course, we have gospel writings, we have the Roman historians, we have the Jewish historians of the first century to confirm the life of Jesus or his existence. But if this is true, then that really begins to put a very stronger light on the Gospels as being authentic history. So I mentioned it to you. I want to say it's been disputed, but more and more, about 70% of the evidence of the scholars investigating this think this looks like it's authentic, because who would invent such a thing? And James was very well known in the first century in Jerusalem as the brother of Christ. He was the head of the Jerusalem church, for example. You'll see Paul going up to talk to James. And you'll also realize that James was, if you read the history of the Jewish period, the Jewish writers, they talked about James being executed in 62 A.D. A high priest took over who didn't like James and the Christians, and apparently they either threw him from the top of the temple or killed him with clubs that they beat out clothes with. So the James box is one thing. The next artifact, number 6 in our top 10 gospel artifacts, is a ossuary or bone box, the fancy name for it is, belonging to Caiaphas the high priest. And we're going to show you, when you see the picture, you will see the difference in quality of this box and the one relating to James. James was the son of Mary, a peasant. This one you're going to see now is the one of Caiaphas, who was the high priest in Jerusalem. You can tell this is a much more ornate, much more elaborate kind of a bone box, if you want to be crude. It is about just more than 2 feet long and about 1 foot across. And Caiaphas was the high priest. It mentions his name on the inscription on the side. This was found in 1990 as they were building a road in the Peace Forest south of Jerusalem. And we know Caiaphas from the Jewish and Roman writers. He was high priest from 18 to 36 A.D. That's how we know approximately when Jesus was alive and teaching. This has been a very significant discovery because there's almost no disputing this at all. It mentions his name, his family, all the way back to 1990, and very few people have heard about it.